Hey everybody, welcome to our one-on-one interview series where today we're getting to talk with Dr. Mike Houts right here on Apologetics Underground. Well, Dr. Houts, thanks for joining us here on this new series we've come up with, a one-on-one interview series.
No, thanks for having me.
Well, you get to be our first one,
so
no pressure.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're getting to set the bar. We thought you'd be perfect for this. In our interactions before coming here today, I was just so impressed with your background and your story, which we're going to let everybody in on here in just a second. But as we get started, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself. Tell us about where you're at now, where you're working, and your ministry.
Okay. Well, right now, as far as a secular job, I'm currently working at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center.
Oh, just NASA. Okay.
But I was able to work at Los Alamos National Lab for about 11 years before that. My PhD is in nuclear engineering, and so God's really blessed me with just a lot of opportunities, career-wise. But also feel like I'm really being blessed with just the mission opportunities that I have, and the opportunities I have to just really go evangelize, preach the gospel, do kind of combination of benevolence and also evangelism on just a lot of different trips, and again, just feel extremely blessed in my life.
Well, that's excellent. That's really what we wanted to focus on in our interview with you, because we've done a lot of work in our Christianity 101 series and in some other videos talking about good reasons for the existence of God.
Right.
And in your field in science at NASA, again, NASA, we thought you'd be a good person to talk to about that. But interestingly enough, I was also impressed with how busy of a guy you are in ministry as well. You already mentioned mission trips, right, but you're also working with Apologetics Press.
Right, yeah, Apologetics Press, Herald of Truth.
And Herald of Truth.
A lot of really good solid organizations, just trying to really encourage people to think about where they're putting their faith. Would be one way I like to phrase it. Because whether we realize it or not, we all put our faith in something.
Right.
And so, we need to really stay focused on eternity. Just step back and, realize all the evidence that God's given us that we need to be putting our faith in Him, focused on Him. Now, we have physical lives on earth that we use to evangelize, use to lead others to the truth. But again, we really need to make sure we keep our focus right.
Absolutely. This one thing that we kind of talk about around here, and I know the members of this congregation, Metro, which sponsors Apologetics Underground, hear me as their preacher say a lot, is that Christianity is a religion for smart people.
Yeah.
It's a religion based upon not just faith, but also evidence-based faith, where God gives us the reasons to believe in Him. And I'm very interested to pick your brain about that. Speaking of being a smart person, but you do have a couple of degrees. Do you mind if I ask what your educational background is?
Sure. Yeah. It's I went to undergraduate at University of Florida and had a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a bachelor's degree in nuclear engineering, and then did my graduate work up at Massachusetts Institute of Technology and my PhDs in nuclear engineering.
Okay.
And then
MIT, by the way, in case you didn't catch that. Okay, keep going.
And so and then after that, I went out, worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory, again a total of about 11 years, and then now I'm again really blessed to be working as nuclear research manager down at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center.
Well, that's great. It's such an encouraging thing to hear about, to have somebody with your faith in your position. That it's a real honor to get to talk to you today.
No, again, just a blessing to get to be here.
Great. Well, we feel very humbled by your presence. So, with that in mind, if you don't mind me asking, you weren't always a Christian during that whole time, correct?
Correct. Yeah. It was, and it wasn't. I never hated Christians, and I think that's one thing Christians need to realize, that if they're talking to someone that says they're an atheist or says they're an agnostic, they immediately, what can come to mind is the real hateful atheists or agnostics that are really just trying to attack Christians in particular and trying to convert people to atheism, and I would say most atheists and agnostics aren't like that, and I certainly wasn't. I had my experience with Christians growing up where they were actually really good people. I mean, they actually were living the way the Bible would tell them to live. Now, a lot of times I didn't it didn't really click that there was a connection. I would just know, hey, that's a really nice person. You know, wow, that person, that's you know, he's really loving his neighbors as himself, or yeah, I do something really dumb and they wouldn't pick on me. And you're like, so yeah, so just growing up when you're and it didn't click till later that they were. They were actually, they were Bible believers, and that was the reason they were acting that way.
So, would you have defined yourself as an agnostic or an atheist during that time?
Atheist, just from a standpoint of didn't see any reason for God, didn't have any, it's and that was, in hindsight, it's really hard. There's no, it's such a unscientific. Atheism is just an incredibly unscientific, and it is a religion. I mean, I don't know how else to phrase it.
Right.
So, but everything we know about science goes against atheism. But what was so ironic is the perception outside the church, or the perception of someone growing up outside the church, is that the opposite is true. That somehow, somehow it's so scientific to be an atheist.
Right, and I did want to pick your brain a little bit about that. So what we're constantly being told by the media, by universities, and I've got nieces and nephews that are currently in higher education, so in secular schools. So I hear a lot about this from kind of the front lines, that the idea is that religion kind of has, any religion, not just Christianity, has this kind of veneer of, in those circles, of just superstition and being deeply unscientific, whereas atheism is considered to be or naturalism is considered to be a more intellectually stimulating and rich position.
The opposite's true. I mean, I like to go back to a lot of times just get a person to realize God exists, and we'll talk a lot about the physical reasons for that. But I just go back to the fact that we had a choice to be talking here today. I had a choice of drinking coffee or water before the interview. I had a choice what shoe to put on first this morning. And so just any choice at all proves that we're more than just chemicals. And if you run the numbers, I mean, we could be, an atheist will say, well, no, you're just several thousand trillion atoms that are chemically reacting. It's this very sophisticated chemical reaction, and they'll have fancy ways of phrasing things. But the bottom line is, if that's all we are, we cannot make even a simple choice. I think a good analogy is we can take a piece of wood and measure it really accurately today, using lasers and everything, get the texture, get the density, we know the composition, but our best computer programs still could not predict how that piece of wood will burn if we throw it on a fire, because it's such a sophisticated chemical reaction. So I don't know if that makes sense. In other words, it's the temperature of the wood, the air next to the wood, the velocity of the air, the texture of the surface. All of these things come into play. Really, really sophisticated chemical reaction. But just ask somebody, but can the piece of wood choose where it's going to burn? And of course, most rational people will say no. Well, if we were just a chemical reaction, then we would be just like that piece of wood. And so at that point, okay, we know we have a spirit, because most, again, rational people will know they can make choices. Only God can give us a spirit. And so that now lets us be objective when we look at things. And so now when you go and you say, okay, let's see, we've spent hundreds of billions of dollars on biotechnology, smartest PhDs working in some of those labs, incredibly sophisticated labs. If you ever get a chance to see a modern biotechnology lab, you never come close to making life from non-living material. But so now the question is, what's more rational, to pretend that life just made itself 3.8 billion years ago, or to acknowledge that, well, the same God that gave me a spirit so I can do things like make choices, most likely also made life. And and then you follow it, it'd be all the evidence is pointing to He made life the way it's described, that He made it, the way the Bible describes that He made it. So you can follow it that way, but it's just you just really have to encourage people, if they're in that, just step back and think of what they're putting their faith in, because we can make a laptop computer. You can get a decent laptop now for $500 or less, but no sane person's going to say, "Oh, yeah, those laptops in the right conditions, they'll just make themselves." But we can make laptops, and we can't make life. And so, but somehow we're in the culture we're in. We're immersed in this idea that, oh no, the equivalent of saying, no, it's much more scientific to say the laptops made themselves.
And to be honest with you, what we're really talking about here, and we talked about this a little bit before the camera started rolling, that my interest is more in kind of the philosophical side of things, whereas you as a scientist kind of deal in those circles more often than not. But this is really where kind of our two areas of interest really touch. Because what we're really talking about is the argument from agency. You know, having the ability to choose. Where does that come from? And one of the things I hear a lot of atheists, including high up ones like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, say a lot, is that it's a fallacy to explain the complexity of a system by appealing to a system of greater complexity. That it should go in reverse, that you should have a more simplistic explanation, kind of applying Occam's razor to their reasoning, if you will. But what you're really saying is that by saying that a system that could create not only the impressively complex chemical reactions that result in human life, but also the ability for those reactions to result in a independent, conscious being that has choice, would be so impressively complex that it would be impossible.
Well, yeah, it's not even impossible. It's completely different. It can't be purely chemistry and physics and still have choice. And so that's where a lot of the atheists will say, well, we just think we have choice, but we really don't. And the point is, no, I know I can make a choice. Of course, the Bible tells us all throughout the Bible that we make choices, and of course it's telling us to choose to obey the gospel, to believe, repent, confess, be baptized. So that's the fundamental difference. Is that's where we jump from the physical to the spiritual, because the atheists, we cannot have a choice. I mean, we can't make. We can. They'll say, well, we're just such a complicated chemical reaction. We think we can make a choice, but so that's so it's a fundamental difference. And then also, the atheists always appeal to the supernatural, and that's one of the things. The first thing, and someone's really thinking about, say, well, what was before this? What was before this? What was before this? And it's kind of fun watching all the contortions they're trying to do with the Big Bang now. With well, maybe there's a multiverse generator outside the universe. But it sounds really fun, but it's always an appeal to the supernatural, and they always have to go outside the universe, or they go to like a point of infinite density where the laws of nature don't apply. But they always appeal to the supernatural, but they make it sound technical. And so I'm just like, well, if they're appealing to the supernatural, then that is no different at all than us believing in the God of the Bible. But we have tremendous evidence throughout the Bible that we should put our faith in the Bible, not this false God that's made up by who knows who, to try to at least pretend that atheism has a chance. Absolutely.
And you know what, and we talked about this a little bit before too, that it sounds like the issue of choice and agency really played a big part in your journey to Christ.
Yeah, well, one of the things that was also interesting is I had a roommate in college, and again, I'd say the extent of my thinking about it was really just, well, everybody knows evolution's true, everybody knows atheism's true. I mean, that's kind of what you're immersed in the secular university. Well, I had a roommate, he was a Bible believer, but he also happened to be the top mechanical engineering student. Okay, now he was on the Thermodynamics Wall of Fame, which is the Heisman Trophy for engineers.
Which my picture will never be on.
Oh yeah, no, so he's really, really smart. And so, but we start having these discussions, and he asked me a lot of questions that I couldn't answer. But literally, my mindset was just, oh, this is just a fun conversation, and because we all know evolution is true, we all know atheism is true. I mean, I'm at a state university, and you're getting
it's a safe bet,
bombarded by and so it was at the end of a conversation. I think it was almost in frustration. He showed me this paragraph. And it was written by a philosophy professor at another university. It wasn't at our university, it was a different university. And I read this paragraph, and it was basically a profession of faith in evolution. Life rose 3.8 billion years ago, the Big Bang. And the philosophy professor was trying to make it that unless a person would, to get a technical degree from his university, the person would have to sign that paragraph.
Kind of like almost like a confession for a denomination.
It was basically and so I read the paragraph, and I'm like, well, we all know that's true, and we have these fun conversations when we don't want to study, and also, but then it dawned on me that here's my roommate, top mechanical engineering student. The philosophy professor would keep him from being allowed to get a technical degree. So that's when it dawned on me, it's not science versus Christianity. It's basically, it's a philosophical, it's the religion of atheism versus Christianity.
Sure.
And then once it clicked that, hey, then you start thinking about it. Then you do run into things like, okay, do I really think life could just make itself?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's absurd. And the more we learn about life, the more absurd that becomes. Do we really think you could add information to the genome by mutations and natural selection? And of course, now we know that's absurd also.
Right.
I mean, that's just in the last. There was, this was a long time ago when I was in college, so we didn't have the knowledge of genetics that we do today. But based on what we know about DNA today and genetics, I mean, it's just, again, it's absurd to say that mutations and natural selection are going to add information, somehow turn a bacteria into a person, or somehow. The best way to phrase is add information. So all the technical falls into play, but it's. At least for me, it was really getting something to happen that would get me to think about it objectively.
Sure.
And so that's so if we're talking to people, evangelizing, it's really, I don't want to say it's a shotgun approach, but just realize that all of the logic in the world isn't going to convince them if they're not willing to just step back and think objectively about where they're putting their faith.
Yeah, and I think that's a really brilliant way to put it. Talking about this, how. What I really want to focus on now, the idea that I hear a lot that people professing, well, belief in God really is just, again, another fallacy, the God of the gaps fallacy. Yeah. To where as science expands, the gap between where God lives narrows. And as science expands, we no longer need God. Yeah. And what I'm seeing, and again, maybe we do have to be aware of our biases somewhat, but what I see is that as we get to know more and more and more about the natural world and how it operates and the laws of the universe and the foundations of reality, that God makes even more sense.
Oh, yeah.
Not less sense.
Oh, no, it's 100% confirming God. I mean, 500 years ago, people used to think, well, I think Aristotle used to teach that where crocodiles came from, would you have logs floating down the Nile River, and the log would sink, and then it'd come back up as a crocodile. Yeah. And he's a smart guy.
Very smart guy. Very smart guy.
And because he didn't know any better. And so, but then science advances. In Middle Ages, same thing. People used to think rats would spontaneously arise out of trash, and science advances. We realize no, that's not true. Louis Pasteur, Bible believer, had many. Basically disproved this whole idea of spontaneous generation. People before him had also, and so Romans. Romans 1:18 is completely true. I mean, it's people if we look at God's creation, we know about His eternal power and divine nature. I mean, we know you still need the Bible, obviously, to know what God wants us to do. But but then just the more science advances, they used to teach vestigial organs, because it's atheism that sets science back, and that's another one that people have to realize. Yeah. I'll give just a few examples. There used to be this belief, I think it was Wiedersheim back in 1895, said there were 180 organs and structures in our body that did absolutely nothing. And then he went on to explain, this is evidence for evolution, blah blah blah. Well, you start thinking about, well, what if someone graduates college and they're this brilliant anatomist? What are they going to study? Are they going to pick one of those 180 organs and structures that this famous German scientist had said is totally useless? Well, of course not. They're going to go study something else. And so it took us literally until 2003 before we'd identified the importance, the functions of those organs and structures. So it was 108 years from when he made that claim. And so it was a clear case where this faith in atheism, or this anti-science faith in evolution really set science back. And so there used to be junk DNA. A lot of people still remember that term. Well, that didn't last very long, I think, and part of it might have been because people realized it's not. It's just ignorance, and ignorance isn't necessarily a bad word. So we didn't know what the DNA did, but you had people out in front, a lot of the famous atheists. This is proof of evolution. 98% of our DNA is junk. Completely false. But if real scientists had believed them, then that would have been a huge setback. Also, I think most real scientists just said, whatever, because they'd figured it out.
Sure, and as like we were saying earlier, as the more we learn, the more complex we see, the less naturalism functions as an explanation
Right. Oh yeah.
for all of these results. So
So everything's pointing back to a
Sure.
designer, and it gets the case.
It's the best answer.
Is true science always confirms the Bible,
Amen.
but there's a lot of fake science out there. I mean, you know, people start hearing the term fake news. Yeah, it's funny,
Yeah.
some of these overseas mission trips.
Yeah.
Almost everybody in the world now knows about fake news, and
Sure.
but you can also look, and there's fake science.
Sure.
And I'll just call it. It's the way I like to think of it. You have atheists with scientific credentials. If they're speaking as a scientist, they're going to be just as right as anybody else. You know, I mean, because we're all human, we all, do our best to. But unfortunately, the ones that get the press, they're the atheists with scientific credentials speaking as atheists, and it is just 100% fake science when they start saying, we see, somehow mutations in natural selection are going to improve the genome or add information, or 3.8 billion years ago, maybe life made itself, or it's nonsense.
I like to remind myself of what John Lennox said once, that we need to never forget the law of the conservation of nonsense.
Yeah.
That nonsense remains nonsense even when smart people say it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, so we've already talked about how you moved away from a lack of faith to a fuller faith. Now that you have made the transition into being a Christian and giving your life over to Christ, as a scientist now, what are some of the real issues you see with evolution or naturalism? Like, what are some of the real problems that stick out to you?
So it's really across the board. I think, again, most people realize they can make a choice, so that proves they have a spirit, proves they're more physical. But I think most people realize now that life is so complicated. It's just absurd to say life could make itself. Now, it doesn't mean you can always postulate something. I can say, well, the cars in the parking lot are making themselves because there's I don't know if there's an iron ore nearby, an iron, if it gets under the right pressure and the right conditions, it could turn into that sheet that makes the, the hood. So it's good creative writing, but most people realize that. I think, and so I think now where most people, where it's being used to try to deceive people and basically become atheists or believing in evolution, it really does come down to the, I'd say, information in the genome. When they talk about how somehow mutations in natural selection are making things better. And there's J.C. Sanford, of course, the geneticist from Cornell, others really done a fantastic job addressing that. But it's really a lot of different analogies that could be used. But the reason that's used is people will say, well, hey, we see changes, not people. They are people, but atheists will say. But atheists will say, well, we see change, and evolution is just change, and so since we see change, that's I think how a lot of, you get your average junior high school kid that just wants to, do half decent on a test and then move on to, with everything else they got going on in life. Sure. They're going to say, oh, okay, you're right. I go down to the pet store. There's a new breed of dog or cat, and so that's. And so one of the things that we should really impress on them is that the change we're seeing, it's always it's a loss of genetic information.
It's redactive.
It's not. So you're not. I think Sanford says we're going down, not up. But a way to. But another way to think about that is you use this. One of the analogies is with a car. And if you just picture, if you say everybody imagine a perfect automobile, and then write the manual for making that perfect automobile, and then before you make any cars, so make 1,000 copies of that manual, and then in each manual change 100 words. Just randomly change them. So every manual's had 100 words changed. They're all different.
And that's just one generation.
And that'd be one generation. Right. And it's again, the estimates are there's 100 mutations per generation. So that's your mutation. So you start out perfect. Now you had 100 mutations. So that's your mutations. Now go ahead and make 1,500 cars using your 1,000 manuals. And so now I've got 1,500 cars, so I can select something. I can put some natural selection on that. So maybe I get rid of the 500 cars I like the least. In other words, some of the cars, depending on what words were changed in their manual, they might just have a missing a rearview mirror or something. Whereas other cars,
knob on the radio.
Or something. Whereas other cars, maybe there's no transmission or So you want to so get rid of the 500 you don't like, and then you repeat the process. So now you take the manuals that were used to make the 1,000 cars you kept, and now change another 100 words in each of those manuals. Again, so now every manual has 200 words changed. but they're different words. Yeah, changed. Make 1,500 cars, keep the 1,000 you like, get rid of the 500 you like less. That's your natural selection. And so that's mutations and natural selection.
Sure.
And so then the question is just, so you do that 100 times, now you've changed 10,000 words in each manual. And so the question that can be asked is, okay, how long will it take the car to turn into a jet airplane? And
Right.
most, again, your average 8th to 9th grader, they've picked up on the point that no, the cars are degenerating.
You're going to end up with a unicycle.
Yeah, exactly, or at best, yeah. And eventually you end up with something that just doesn't do anything. And so, but that's what we're seeing genetically. I mean, there was the paper by Lynch, I think it was 2016, talking about like a 1 to 5% loss of fitness each generation. It's scary if people focus on the physical. And that's you can definitely tie that in with why it's so important to focus on the spiritual. If we're focused the way we should be, it doesn't matter. I mean, yes, we're degrading.
And that's what's always really confused me about evolution is as well, not really evolution so much as just naturalism.
Right.
Because the idea is that I know a lot of people that seem to take great comfort from that. The idea that, well, there isn't a God, therefore there's no one above me telling me what to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, do you have any idea of the bag you're left holding if you, if
yeah.
you have that? It's not, your life isn't better because God's not in it. It would be way, way, way worse.
Right.
The world's going down a really steep cliff.
Yeah, oh yeah.
If that's the case. So, but I wanted to focus on something, because again, we mentioned it kind of being an either-or thing before, and how that's not really the case. I see a lot of people saying, well, it's either Darwin is right or Moses was right or God is right.
Right.
And to me, that doesn't really seem like a really good equivalency.
Well, I think the natural, you call it natural selection, you call it survival of the fittest. So that's, everybody agrees on that.
Sure.
Bible believers agree with that. The evolutionists agree with that.
Yeah.
And so, but it's what effect that has is where the disagreement starts to come in. I think that's another, I'd almost call it a sleight of hand by the evolutionists, is they'll pretend that Christians don't believe in natural selection, or
or even evolution to a degree.
Yeah.
I've always heard it put. I've always heard it put by guys like Brad Harrop and others that Christians are fine with microevolution.
Right.
The idea that small changes within species over time, of course that happens.
Right.
Just macro, elephant to giraffe.
But that's the other one. So I'll even say that's a deceptive term, because just linguistically you think, okay, what does lots of micro give you? Well, it gives you macro, but micro, you're losing information. Macro, you have to gain information. So again, that's the key thing, is what we're seeing is the exact opposite of evolution. I mean, what true science shows us is the opposite of evolution, but it is natural selection. It is, mutations and natural selection. But so microevolution, you'll give a financial analogy. Say we were going to do a investment seminar tonight. Well, the speaker would come in, and of course his job is to get you to give him all your money. Basically, because he's going to make you rich. So say he got up there and he said, so we're going to sell machines, and every time we sell a machine, we're going to lose $1. But don't worry, we're going to make it up in volume. Okay, so that's basically microevolution leading to macroevolution.
Yeah.
In other words, you're just microevolution stuff's going extinct.
Sounds like a politician.
You're not getting macroevolution, and so the whole even that phraseology to me is almost it's an intentional deception. Right. And again, and Brad's a great guy. I'm just saying he's using the terms they're using, but it's not even that. Even that almost sounds too technical.
Sure.
Just think about what's really happening there. Yeah. And so what we see when we see small changes, it is at best information neutral. But you get things like new breeds of dogs and cats. Typically it's a significant loss of genetic information.
Sure.
And so that's so I'd say that's probably the one that confuses kids the most, or that's used to confuse kids the most.
And I think that's a good way to put it. Making it more confusing, and therefore it'll have a better veneer of rightness to it. Because
if they're reading in their book, or their teacher's saying, well, we see microevolution all the time, and so, and therefore, which is, new breeds of dogs and cats, and so, but what we're really studying is this macroevolution. Well, all of a sudden the person knows, well, boy, if microevolution is true, then macroevolution must be true, but it's totally opposite.
And then therefore it just becomes all micro, and therefore why are we making the distinction?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's, and then, Yeah, so to me that's the big
Yeah.
one. Then they'll try to attack on things like the age of the earth and the flood, but
Right.
again, that's as the evidence is coming in, it's very
Sure.
clear that the Bible is
Yeah.
one thing with historical science or whatever people when people talk about trying to determine what happened in history.
Right.
You only go so far with that. So I think the studying genetics, studying the complexity of life, that's all stuff we can do in the lab now. That's probably
Yeah.
a much stronger case to use for showing why the Bible is correct and evolution is wrong.
Well,
but you
yeah.
can even go back but when you go back and look at reasonable interpretations of geology and things we see,
Sure.
Again, reasonable interpretations are very consistent with the biblical
Yeah,
account.
and again, it's just it seems like we're trying to not only downgrade the Bible, but we're trying to elevate science to beyond its means.
Yeah, it's not science. It's again, it's I would call it again atheists with
Yeah.
scientific credentials speaking
Sure.
as atheists, because no scientist is going to say something happens randomly.
Sure.
That means like life making
Yeah.
itself from non-life that we can't do on purpose.
And going back to your statement on the Bible, like where you were kind of looking at the scoreboard and seeing all the ones the Bible was getting right,
Yeah.
and seeing how atheism was
Atheists
getting
getting wrong, yeah.
My thought on that is, if you go to the same restaurant, decide to go to the same restaurant for dinner every night in 1 week, and the first 3 nights they get your order completely wrong.
Yeah.
Do you go back the 4th night?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have to have a sense of humor if you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Right.
got to be like, I know it's gonna be wrong, but I just want to see what turns out.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But you're right. I mean, it's just and you certainly, exactly. Yeah. You start looking at these. I don't want to call them patterns, but you learn from experience for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So moving on just a little bit, and also backing up slightly, what I was really interested in getting to ask you, as someone who has had a journey that has taken him from a complete lack of belief in God to giving your life over to God enough to go on mission trips in Africa and in other countries, and carrying that with you also into the secular realm. Obviously, you're passionate about these things, but rewinding the clock just a little bit, when you were an atheist, what were some arguments that stood out to you at the time that kind of felt like good reasons to not believe in God? What were the most?
Well, they were all very very superficial.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I should say a lot of them were superficial. Some of them would be a little more, the philosophical ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like why is how could God allow pain and suffering?
Sure.
But that would be. But again, understanding God gives us free will. We look
Right.
at pain and suffering. Most pain and suffering is caused by people using their free will against God, and it's not necessarily.
Sure.
I do something that God doesn't want me to do, and that causes me pain and suffering. If I can do something God doesn't want me to do, I can cause a lot of other people pain and suffering. And so,
Right.
so things like that started to make sense. You get what I meant by like superficial, I'd almost call it misleading.
Right.
People would say, "Oh well, going back to evolution. Well, evolution is just change, and we see change all the time." And the reason that's so misleading is the change we see. It's always either basically no new information in the genome or a loss of information from the genome. And evolution would require a gain in information. And so it's completely opposite. But that one's still used today. You'll hear high school teachers or high school students come back and say, "Oh yeah, in biology today they said, well, you go see a new breed of dog and cat.
Yeah.
That's just like evolution." Well, it is the opposite of evolution.
And then they go to physics and they find out about thermodynamics and entropy and how that doesn't really work.
Yeah, but then they try to disconnect that because then they're taught about the Big Bang, which we know doesn't work either. But they try to make sure that they don't connect the two. So a lot of it's and the other one on the pain and suffering is, to me, it also goes back to just if we're focused on eternity, like Paul said, anything he goes through on earth is nothing compared to the riches of Christ. So it's
this idea of, and what I'm noticing is, frankly, kind of what I've run into a lot in having conversations with atheists or people who just consider themselves to be agnostic, that the majority of their issues with God, or the existence of God, and their lack of belief in God, mostly stem from either personal issues or cultural issues.
right.
Which I would define the problem of evil not only as which you mentioned, not only as a philosophical argument against the existence of God, but a deeply cultural one.
Right.
I think I forget who was talking about. I believe it was Dr. Clay Jones at Biola University was discussing how if you go to other nations and you engage with even academics in other cultures, how they don't view the problem of evil as something really deeply concerning about the existence of God. They're fine with it because their culture is different.
Right.
It's really our Western American Anglo-Saxon culture that has a real problem with us being hurt all the time or bad things happening to quote unquote good people.
Yeah.
Would you say that was the case for yourself, or were there any technical issues?
A lot of it's kind of also the I'd say the confusion generated in the society, because I think everyone knows there's a God, but if you're immersed in a society that's telling you to worship something else, give an example like 1 Kings 18, when it talks about the hundreds of prophets with Baal and Asherah, they eat at Jezebel's table, so they're very influential people, but they. And so you'd have, and then I think it's 1 Kings 18:21, where it says the people answered not a word, whether to put their faith in God or else. So they were just. So when there's all this conflicting information, sometimes people just sit back and see what's going to happen. So it was a lot of that. I can't think of any strong argument for atheism that was really keeping me an atheist, because there really aren't any strong arguments for atheism.
Right.
So that's why it's a little hard to explain. I just got back from Lesotho, I think.
Yeah, you were talking to me about that.
And one of the individuals I was talking to there, he said there's not a word in their native language for atheist. Because he says absolutely everybody knows there's a God, and I thought that was really. And I don't think he wasn't waxing poetic. He was like, what does that mean? How do you define that? What do you And so it's so you're right. It is kind of something that maybe is something in the United States, again, just to try to generate confusion, distract from the real issues. To me, it's the fact. Again, just goes back to the fact we can make a choice, which unfortunately does allow for evil things to be done. But that proves God. And we don't have to argue about now if there's a God or not. The fact that there's anything even called evil, because again, there'd be no such thing as evil if there wasn't a God. So that's but it's almost like the argument is couched to try to get people off on a tangent. So they're not really thinking about what they're.
Well, like one of the questions we asked in regards to that in our Christianity 101 series is, if there can be evil without God, do fish know they're wet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because the only really way you can know you're wet is if you have something dry to compare it to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So, but I think really getting back to this idea that these cultural reasons for it, that makes it sound like the assumptions we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Like when you were talking to your roommate and just saying, well, of course you don't believe this. You're in higher education like I'm in higher education. Yeah. Of course we all agree.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people just live their life on the basis of a set list of assumptions instead of actually taking a look at the data.
Right. And I think also it's one of the blessings we have in America is we have so many opportunities, but that can also hinder us because it's very easy to get extremely busy, doing things that aren't necessarily bad things, but just never be able to step back and really think about what's important. And so it's, there's people, say they might work 16, 18 hours a day or more, and they do great employee. They do a fantastic, work, and they couldn't imagine doing anything else because they enjoy their job so much. But again, it's really easy to wake up and your life's almost over and hadn't really thought about, because one of the things, the longest physical life on earth is still 0 compared to eternity. And that's, that's mathematical.
Absolutely. And that's interesting. Like how many, do you really worry about, the average person, do they really worry about how the microwave pops popcorn, or do they just put the bag in and
they're just hungry. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's not really being intellectually lazy. It's just being intellectually complacent.
Right.
And that's what that's one of the things that we're really interested in in this ministry is getting back to the intellectual core and the really good reasons for faith. Yeah. And how faith is deeply intellectually stimulating.
Right.
So getting to that aspect of it, you're in college, you're an atheist,
right.
or or somewhere between the atheist agnostic border.
Right.
And then you come to Christ. How does that
So
take place?
that's an important one, because it's just because a person, again, if most people step back and think about it objectively, they'll reject atheism, they'll reject evolution, and that's something we can talk about more. But it really is, because it's just nonsense when someone steps back and thinks about it.
Yeah. The average person is too smart to believe this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so they won't. But there's a long way from going from that point where I don't believe that to becoming a Christian. And so there's so many denominations out there. There's so many. I call them like the Star Wars religions. You got the good force, or the bad side of the force, dark side.
Again, philosophical side.
Yeah.
The dualistic kind of.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so people
Star Wars is a big commercial for philosophical dualism.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I bet. Yeah. And so they'll get to that, and then they'll almost be content if they stop thinking about it. Because it'll be just like, well, I'm going to try to be good, do the best I can to be good, and then we'll just see what happens. Yeah, and so it's how to get someone from realizing atheism and evolution doesn't work to becoming a Christian. And I think the one that worked for my wife and I was just the church. Basically, we went through all kinds of different denominations, all kinds, but it was only when we got to church where we said, well, what do you guys think about this? And they said, well, it doesn't matter what we think, let's see what the Bible says. And that was literally the first time that was ever said to us, because you have a lot of the denominations, they'll be, some of them are probably 80% biblical. I mean, it's not like they're completely wrong, but it's always, they always have some creed or something that this is what they believe, and there's these little differences. But it was literally the Church of Christ was the first one that said, well, let's see what the Bible says. The other, and I think that to me that's really key.
So the Bible played a really big role in your
because that's what made really made sense, was this just see what the Bible says, nothing more, nothing less. Because there's always once we were at a denomination and they really pushed predestination, and you can almost see why they would do that, because from a human perspective, it's like, well, how does God give us free will? And I don't know, but the other thing, there's a lot of things about God I don't know. I always calibrate myself with what's it like in eternity? What's it outside the dimension of time? And that's an easy way to get a headache. It's fun to eat pizza and talk. That's,
exactly.
We need to do that.
Yeah, that's the Bible nerd stuff. By the way.
But it's so I just know from reading the Bible. Well, I know I have free will. I know I can make choices, and then I know, but anyway, so they were big on predestination, and they had convinced most of their youth that before they were born, they were either going to heaven or hell. Well, you can imagine what that does to your average thinking teenager. They have a bad day. They're like, well, I guess I'm not going to heaven. And then
might as well go all
and they were all in. I mean, they were. I don't even want to say all the stuff they were doing, but they were. And so we like, okay, this isn't right. We didn't know. It's embarrassing. We hadn't studied the Bible enough to really understand, but we could just see by the fruits that, okay, we know that one's not right. You'd have other ones. It's and so it's a long process. I think. Fred Hoyle, he's the individual that named the Big Bang. He coined the term, Big Bang. Well, he was the one that talked about tornadoes going through junkyards, and he said the odds of life forming from inanimate matter was like 1 and 1 followed by 40,000 zeros. So he knew evolution couldn't work. But for whatever reason, he never, as far as anybody knows, he never put his faith in the Bible.
I think the car changes with every analogy every time you hear this quoted, but like the one I heard was that the odds of it happened are roughly equivalent to a tornado passing through a junkyard, and when it was over, it has completely and totally assembled a 71 Nova.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So but he never. But he did write 3 books on directed panspermia, and that was the idea that aliens put life here on Earth. And what bothers me about that is he had to know that didn't answer the question either, because then you're just
passes the buck.
Because then you're like, exactly, who made the aliens? And so
makes for a great movie.
Many great movies. But but that was the whole point. Is I would have expected someone like him to get further than he did, if that makes sense. In other words, he knew it couldn't just happen randomly, but he just, like you say, he just passed the buck. And so that's the other thing with these types of discussions. It's really, to me, it's really just get a person to just really objectively consider where they're putting their faith, and then get them into a Bible study. Get teach them the gospel, because it's that's the key. To me, that's the importance of the apologetics, is to just get someone to step back and really think. This what the world's believing now. You go back to that 1 Kings chapter 18. I mean, again, they're telling people to, I think in Isaiah 44, they talk about how Baal worship, and they go out in the woods and they'd take a log and they'd cut it.
We just did a video on this.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So again, they're bound down. And so you think, man, that's primitive.
Sure.
I mean, they're carving an idol out of wood. They're bound down worshiping.
And that's a hilarious position to take, because you read Isaiah's section on that. That's in our video, Trial of the False Gods, by the way, in case you want to look it up. Where how intellectually ridiculous he finds idolatry.
Yeah.
And how frankly stupid he thinks it is. Yeah, and we don't get that benefit of the doubt anymore.
Yeah, so that's 3,000 years ago.
Sure.
3,000 years ago, and we look back on that and we say, oh, those people, man, they're so primitive. Well, I always wonder, what if they could look forward 3,000 years?
Sure.
And they say, well, wow, can you believe 3,000 years from now they're going to pretend the universe and everything in it just makes itself?
Yeah.
There's a big explosion made all of God's creation.
Yeah.
And they would be looking at us saying, man, we really regress. I mean, we're they look at us thinking we're so primitive.
They're going to keep doing this idolatry nonsense, and the only progression they're going to make in it is they're actually just going to take out the middleman and get rid of the statue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's like I said, conservation of nonsense. It remains nonsense.
Yeah.
So I think that's very interesting. So you went shopping, as it were, for like the right church.
Right.
But it was the Church of Christ coming in and saying, "Here's the Bible."
Yeah. Well, and it was us. Yeah. Now we visited. Now it turned out the where we were baptized really good outreach and really out in the community. That's also really important because a lot of the outside the church, there's certain groups that get on the list of these are real conservative or for whatever reason. People are basically scared to visit. I don't know how else to phrase it, and so that's why, like, I know you're doing a VBS this week. That's fantastic. Be out in the community. Let people know we're nice people. We're not going to stalk you. We're not going to it's just because because we were I would almost say afraid to go to places like the Church of Christ. We would dabble around with the ones that were they're just don't worry about them. Every other Sunday they might mention a Bible verse, but it's really low pressure. And so that would be outside the church. It's a temptation to go to a very, I guess I'll use the word liberal denomination because it's not threatening. You just go in there.
And really, I think that's what a lot of people are looking for.
Yeah.
They're looking for, and that's kind of the problem. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to worry about how the microwave works.
Right, and so the danger is they'll go there, and you'll usually have a great band, and you'll have all these and you go out there kind of feeling whatever.
Yeah.
And but then after a few years, you're like, well, okay, I checked the Christianity box, which obviously had nothing to do with Christianity, but I tried that. That doesn't work, so I'm going to go do whatever, or they'll just stay in it, real superficial. Feel like, okay, I'm good because every Sunday I go, to this play, and they don't go beyond that. So it is actually really dangerous. Almost like a filter between someone that's just out in the world and actually Christianity, but they're told that that's somehow related, somehow Christian or something.
And unless we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to make clear, because this is something actually I think we talked about before the cameras turned on too, that it's not, lest we be accused of just being Church of Christ fanboys or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean,
Bible.
obviously we are,
but it's what the Bible says. Nothing more. Nothing less.
Exactly. And that's what I want people to try and focus on. It's not that we're saying, well, the Church of Christ is just better. The Church of Christ. It's not that the Bible or Christianity got this from the Churches of Christ. The Churches of Christ got this from Christianity. It's New Testament Christianity that we find intellectually stimulating.
Yeah.
And it's God's word that we find intellectually and philosophically and spiritually fulfilling.
Right.
It's just that we happen to luck out and find a movement that emphasizes that.
Right.
You know, that doubles down on what the Word says. So.
And that's interesting also because again, a lot of the foreign countries, you know, well, I mentioned Lesotho, but Philippines, a lot of the countries in Africa, there'll be groups that, again, just from studying the Bible, they're not. I mean, that they come to the same conclusions about what the Bible says about what we need to do to be saved and how do we worship and how do we. And so it's not. And they'll have completely different. Sometimes they'll have completely different names, or they'll have different. But it's you look at what they're teaching, and it's the Bible. So it's not. When we talk about. We're really just talking about the church as it was established on Pentecost. It's not.
Yeah.
It's
I think the way I had it said to me once, and I've stolen it because all preachers steal.
Oh, you have to, yeah.
But the way I heard it put to me once was that I'm not a Christian because I attend the Church of Christ. I'm a Christian who attends the Church of Christ because the Church of Christ is where I heard the gospel. Right. And that made me a Christian. Right. And I think that's important.
Or just if God's if we've obeyed the gospel, then God has added us to His church.
Okay, so Dr. Houts, we just talked about how important the Bible was to your journey to Christ and how much of an influence it had. What was it, coming from your background, what was it that really kind of confirmed the Bible is reliable for you?
So it was a process again. The more a person reads the Bible, of course, faith comes from hearing by the word of Christ. And so you just a lot of things realize that the Bible is God's inerrant word, a lot of the wisdom in the Bible. But what really got me to start thinking was actually the areas where people would typically attack the Bible on. It turned out that evidence was coming in real time that it's actually the Bible that was correct and the people that were attacking it were wrong. And of course, we've all, I mean, a lot of the areas I hadn't heard about at the time, when we talk about like the Hittites and did they really exist? So of course they didn't exist until we found out, well, they did exist.
Had a huge, had one of the biggest empires of ancient history.
Right. So you had all these cases where people would say, well, here's why we know the Bible's wrong, and they'd be proven incorrect. And so one of the ones, it was related to the flood, and of course now there's a lot of people would attack the Bible, based on the flood, as it's described in Genesis, and and I remember once I was in that mode. I'd seen an article, I think it was in National Geographic, saying, well, maybe Noah just thought that the flood was global, but it's just this really big local flood, and somehow and I had a roommate, and he was a Bible believer, and I wasn't at that time, but I was trying to find common ground with him, and so I took him that article and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And I was sure he was going to say, oh yeah, that's probably right, because it was very professionally written and everything else. And he goes, no, the Bible is very clear. The flood covered the entire earth. And at the time, I was almost taken aback. I mean, again, I was trying to find some common ground. He's a really nice guy. Really
Give me
young.
something, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, come on. And so I. But then, you start looking at it, and if you really start looking at everything from the rock layers, the fact there's really no erosion between the layers, to the fact that you have fossil graveyards. They're finding soft tissue and dinosaur bones. Everything, all the evidence as it's coming in is confirming the biblical account of the flood. And so it was things like that. We, of course, in 2006, when Stanford and Purdue started reporting fluctuations in the decay rates of their medical isotopes, which again, once you see fluctuations in radioactive decay rates, that effectively it eliminates the key assumption for most radiometric dating methods that things have always been constant, because obviously if they're fluctuating today,
because they operate on that assumption.
Exactly. So if they're fluctuating today, well, what might have been happening during creation week and the flood? And so you start all these areas that people would really try to attack the Bible on, then they're basically the Bible wins.
I think that's very interesting the way you're putting it, that in that context, because it's not necessarily an either-or thing. Right. It's not necessarily like, well, either it's this number that the Bible gives or this number that the university gives. Right. It's just showing that we can't trust science in every single area. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always wrong.
Oh, correct. Yeah.
It just means that the Bible, it's not the Bible or science. They're two different things.
Right. And true science always confirms the Bible, and they support each other. Right. And so, and then you couple that, then of course, then with the obvious ones, which is again just the fact we can make choices,
sure.
the complexity of life, now what we're learning about information in the genome. So it all is confirming the Bible. But then there's also a lot of the just reading the Bible, because it really is faith comes from hearing by the word of Christ. And so things like one of the verses that really struck me was again, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
Right.
And that doesn't make any sense at all from a human standpoint. But if you read that and you just think about it for 60 seconds, wow, that makes a lot of there's a lot of wisdom, and those are throughout the Bible. And so it's you definitely need to read the Bible.
Right.
But what can maybe get a person to at least objectively consider the Bible is when they start realizing that through the centuries, basically in any area the Bible has been attacked, the Bible ends up being correct, and then the person that's attacking the Bible, usually they'll move on to something else. I mean, most of the atheists, they were using junk DNA to try to argue against the Bible. Well, they've moved on because they know that was a wrong argument. They used vestigial organs. Well, they've moved on from that. You don't hear atheists saying, "Oh, you silly Christians, you don't believe that life just makes itself." Because they've way past that. They're like, "Okay, we don't want to talk about that at all." But it really just comes down to the more you look into it, the more a person reads the Bible, the stronger their faith is going to get.
I think that idea, and that's again, if we're moving away from the scientific part, getting more into kind of a theology context, that's a very, very deep part of theology concerning and doctrine concerning the Word of God, that it's self-authenticating.
Right.
That it doesn't just confirm itself against external evidence, like you were just talking about, but it also confirms itself internally and spiritually in your own life if you engage with it.
And even just talk about how God is love. Well, so here's God that creates the universe, which again that's the physical, but then is willing to send His Son to die on a cross so that I could be forgiven of my sins, which is obviously spiritual. But you start trying to summarize that, and so you have a God that's infinitely powerful, can make the entire, but also I would say infinitely loving, because you think of how Christ was humiliated and ridiculed and mocked while he's dying a horrible physical death. That goes back to the love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, because you think of any human with that much power, it would just obliterate.
Sure.
And so it's a real, just things like that about the Bible are so compelling, so different than what humans would typically consider.
Absolutely.
And so that's also, again, like you said, it's internally confirmed. And there's, again, just different examples will have a big impact on people, but I think anybody that thought about it, they'd come up with dozens or hundreds of examples like that.
Great. So that's kind of what happened. The gospel found you.
Yeah.
And that obviously changed your life completely. Didn't set you on a different career path necessarily.
Oh, no, God uses us for the and that's just it's another discussion. But God, I think God gives us interests and blesses us in certain ways that we can use. Speaking
of your career and your professionalism, and I want you to be a little broad with this, not just talking about your work at NASA, but also outside of NASA in different ministries. Because you have to remember, I know a lot of people want to really talk about the NASA stuff because you're talking to a kid who watched Apollo 13 and just loved it. So, but how has your professional work deepened your faith or affected your faith in any way?
It strengthens it just across the board. The more you just look into anything, the more it points back to God. And so, of course, Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God. I always was very fascinated in astronomy, just amateur astronomy when I was growing up, but just the more we learn, the more the more true science confirms the Bible. And so from that standpoint, it strengthens it. And then when just out doing evangelism and mission trips and getting to interact with people and studying the Bible with people, again, that also very much strengthens.
Have you had, and I don't know, I don't want to get too personal necessarily with this, but have you had any ministry opportunities at NASA?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, talked to a lot of people. People are very receptive. I think that's the other. It's almost like a fallacy or something that's promoted. I won't blame everything on the atheists, but you try to get this perception that if you talk to people, they're gonna they're just gonna you're gonna get this big fight, or they're gonna never really seen that. You can talk to people because deep down people know this is really important. I've had people. Had one individual, it was probably 12 years ago, we were talking about the subject, and he said something like, I agree completely with your logic, but I still disagree with you. And that was kind of odd. And I was like, okay, where do you go with that one? So I didn't...
it's kind of like saying you're right, but I don't want you.
Right, right. And but anyway, yeah. So we're good friends. I mean, he's a great guy. But he was probably I don't know if he'd call himself an atheist or agnostic, or but really. And it was only about 2 months ago. He comes walking across the parking lot, and he says, you probably don't even remember what we talked. You don't probably remember this, but a really long time ago we were having this conversation, and he goes, I now agree with you completely. And so, but that was over a period of 10 or 12 years, and I almost feel bad. It wasn't, he was obviously talking to other people or something, because we didn't have a lot of different other conversations on that. So people, people realize that this is what's really important.
Yeah.
It's and it really does come down to where they're putting their faith. Very few people are going to, they might claim they will, but they're not going to go through 80 years on earth and never think about the afterlife, never think about the fact that they have a spirit, never think about it. I mean, the people are thinking about that. So I would just encourage anybody, just look for opportunities.
Sure.
I mean, and it can be really simple. I mean, you can say, someone say, hey, nice day today, isn't it? I say, yeah, and, God's creation amazing or something. Just to at least give them the opportunity to realize, hey, if I ever want to talk about God, or if I want to talk about something serious.
Sure. And what you're really touching on is something that we get asked about a lot. One of the questions I've gotten over the last couple of weeks from family members and others who have come across the ministry here, why underground? Why Apologetics underground? And my answer to them has been kind of what you're really talking about, that this is, I think a lot of people, when they think of evangelism or apologetics or just reaching out with the gospel, they think about a formal setting. They think about a pulpit or going to church or inviting somebody to a VBS or something like that. But really what we're talking about is being prepared. Peter says, our theme verse for this ministry is Peter telling us to always being prepared to give a reason for a defense, a reason for the hope that's within you. That includes in a McDonald's parking lot. Exactly,
and it's also very important with friends, with people we know well enough so they'll trust us. So it's kind of a combination. I think it is very useful. Sometimes people like to go to like a public setting and get just a lot of information, a lot of detail, just to kind of be thinking about it. But it's really going to come down to someone they trust, because they need to open up and say, okay, this is why I'm not putting my faith in God. This is why I can't, somehow, just can't put my full faith in the Bible, or this is why this can't be a priority. And they're not going to raise their hand in front of 1,000 people that they don't know and say, oh,
Sure.
So it's got to be so it's so important that the combination. You can almost think of it the mass evangelism versus the one-on-one.
Sure.
And so that's why what you're doing is so important, because people need to be comfortable knowing that if they got in a situation, everything we know about science confirms the Bible.
Yeah. These questions have answers.
And the more detailed the person wants to get, the more science confirms the Bible. And so, because you'll have people, typically, they'll, how to phrase it, a lot of times if someone is really stuck on the science, that's an easzy one. It really is, because you look at just across the board, especially the recent advances in science confirms the Bible. You will run into people that they have some other reason they don't want to put their faith in the Bible, and they'll start out claiming science has proved the Bible wrong, and you work it through, and again, it becomes obvious that they've just decided, they've just committed to becoming an atheist, and so that's why the personal relationship is so important. It's just like, hey, why are you really doing that? Do they and a lot of times, no one will be close enough to know that, but it's really important to have the personal also, because again, but if someone is really just stuck on it scientifically, that's an easy one. I think the other one, though, is it's so important at high school and college level to keep someone from having their faith weakened, or keep them from feeling like they aren't allowed to consider the Bible.
Well, going back to what we said earlier about these assumptions that people operate on, it seems to me like assumptions like that would have to be built up over years and years and years.
Right.
And so the sooner you can get into the construction process of those assumptions, the better. But Paul talks about, but we tear down defenses. Yeah. That's what evangelism is. Is putting down bad arguments, bad philosophies.
And we have to do it very early. There's a congregation in Orlando. And I won't give their name, but I can tell you if you want. But it's a congregation in Orlando. They were having like second and third graders coming home from school that were having teachers basically trying to ridicule the fact they were Christians, you know, telling them, well, they need to grow up and, you know, they need to be atheists. And so, of course, there are atheist teachers in the elementary schools. So they're actually doing it's like an 8-week apologetics for second through fifth graders. You know,
that's a great idea.
So and so it's not because it's exactly that because you think of your average 8-year-old and they're going to feel they're going to like their Sunday school teacher, but they might also like their school teacher, and they're going to start having these conflicts, and they're not going to realize that, unfortunately, they've got teachers trying to lead them astray at school.
Sure.
And if they don't tell people about it, but by the time they get to high school, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, yeah, I don't think I want to go to church anymore. I don't know if I believe the Bible. You know, and they say, wow, what happened there? Well, it didn't start the week before they said that. You know, like you just said, it started 10 years before. You know, or you know, and so that's very important.
Yeah.
Both for people of all ages, but it's amazing how much a second grader can. I mean, your average first or second grader has probably either asked or thought of the question. Well, if in the beginning God made, if in other words, if God made the universe, who made God? Would be the way they'd phrase it, and so with your average second grader, if you say, well, first the Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, so that means God not only made the heavens and the earth, He also made time. And then you just ask them, well, so if something is outside the dimension of time, can it be made, or can it have a beginning? And of course, the answer is no. Yeah. And for God to have made time, He must be outside of time. And so they'll probably just look at you funny. But some second graders it'll click. But even if it doesn't, they'll realize, okay, there is an answer to that question. You know, and the Bible hits it on the first verse. And of course, the Big Bang never addresses it, or any of the atheistic theories don't. So, but yeah, it's really important to realize it's usually if people leave the church, it's a multi-year process.
Right.
It seems
it takes
to be.
Time.
And so if someone says, hey, I'm starting to wonder about this, boy, as a Christian, as one of their brothers or sisters in Christ, you have to address it immediately, not just they'll get through it, because they might not. They might be, and there's answers to all of that, but it's real important that we take it seriously.
Absolutely. So one of the things we were wondering about, being a faithful believer and Bible-centered servant of Christ in such a secular position as you are, where, again, the stigma is, or at least the interpretation of a lot of Christians is, we look at organizations like NASA as like, well, that's where the atheists live, or that's where the really cold, unfeeling scientists are. Have you encountered any hostility? Have you encountered any criticisms due to your faith? Any persecution at all?
Not really at work. I mean, you get a lot of good open exchange. Again, because I'll say I'm working with true scientists, true engineers, and they're not. They're not atheists trying to push atheism. They're just speaking as scientists and engineers, and so they're very open to a lot of different discussions. They had, one time there was not sure why, one of the individuals I work with. Again, they're all good people. He sent out an email, and he was kind of making fun of biblical creationism, and so but he sent it to like 50 people, so that was actually a great opportunity. I just hit reply all, and I was able to get about
buddy.
And you give like 2 or 3 pages about, okay, now here's all the reasons that's right, and I didn't get any pushback from that. So it wasn't really persecution, because one-on-one, again, you can talk with people fine. Sure. I think it's really just just if anybody, even if you just know them casually, like from conferences and stuff, and one of the things with social media and other things, people know where you're coming from. If they want to talk about it, they'll talk about it. You have great conversations. I've never felt personally really persecuted. Now Marshall the church is very strong in Alabama, and so that could, but at least at my center, I felt a lot of freedom. I think the only time you get, I guess what you'd say, it's just people that don't know you or just kind of randomly looking for ways to attack Christians. And so every now and then you get someone that you don't even know who they are, and they'll start saying, "Oh, can you believe that?" So, but that's just, that's probably expected.
That's
for
not
anything.
exclusive to NASA science.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure that's any Christians ever. I'm sure preachers and everybody else gets that also.
Certainly.
But but I just encourage people, don't ever be afraid to share your faith. Don't ever be afraid. I mean, do it just like you would any other topic. In other words, it's not, you don't want to be purposely abrasive but the Bible tells us not to do that anyway. Sure. But just don't ever feel like you can't be completely open, really, in any field.
Listening to you, it sounds like just you've been outgoing with your faith, and God has backed you up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Good way to phrase it. Yeah. Okay.
So I've really enjoyed this time of getting to converse with you about this stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like we could sit here for hours talking about this.
Yeah.
But I know you don't have time for that, and our viewers at home probably don't have time for that. But I would be remiss, and I think that I would probably get yelled at if we didn't talk about the NASA stuff for just.
Oh, okay.
So just to kind of sum up. NASA just recently announced that we're returning to the moon.
Right. Yeah.
Is there anything extra you can tell us about that, or give us any details about that?
So we're going, to the moon and then on to Mars, and a lot of benefits from doing that. The area that I'm working in, it's nuclear power and propulsion, and so that would be, say, nuclear propulsion systems to make operations in cislunar space.
So you're the mechanic that's going to help get us there.
Or one of them. I'd love to. Yeah. And then also we can do human Mars missions. Makes them a lot of advantages. You can get cut your round trip. Basically your time away from Earth, you can reduce that a lot using advanced propulsion systems. You can add a lot of robustness to the architecture. So it's but just the idea that we're expanding out into cislunar space and then onto Mars is, to me, really exciting. I think there'll be a lot of benefits to everyone. And again, heavens declare the glory of God. Amen. So it'll all come back and glorify God.
It's a very exciting time to be alive. I hear my dad talk about watching the moon landing.
Oh yeah, that was exciting time too. Yeah,
like I'm going to kind of maybe get to do that again.
Yeah.
That's so great. I did want to ask you this. And my son, who I don't know what's going to happen. He might change. He's a kid. He might change his mind next week. But right now, he says he wants to be an aerospace engineer.
Great.
And what he wanted me to ask you was, what's it like to be an honest-to-God rocket scientist?
It's really fun. It's really, if he's interested in it, he'll love it. It's kind of like anything though. So if you're interested in it, if it's something, I say, if God's given him the interest and then he'll love it. Just do it.
Good.
Just take advantage of the talents and blessings that God's given him, and he'll be real happy in any career.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Houts, again, we thank you for your time today. Yeah. Thank you for coming in and sitting down and talking with us. This has been very fulfilling for me. I hope.
No, it's been a lot of fun. I love talking about this.
Good. It's just great having you here today.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us here on our one-on-one series of interviews right here on Apologetics Underground. See you next time.